For decades, American wheat held the crown in international grain markets. Kansas hard red and North Dakota spring wheat contracts, traded on the Chicago Board of Trade, were the industry's benchmark. From bakeries to pasta plants, when buyers wanted consistency, high protein, and quality, they looked straight to the United States. But that reputation began to quietly slip in the summer of 2024. By mid-2025, the shift was undeniable. Has American wheat truly lost its crown? Why are major buyers, from the Philippines to France, South Korea to Mexico, turning to Canada, Australia, and Argentina instead? Let's dive into the logistics, quality concerns, and geopolitical factors fueling the silent upheaval. We'll look beyond the price tags to uncover a growing crisis of confidence, one that's setting off alarms in Washington's agricultural circles. American wheat's long-standing gold standard status has been fading, almost invisibly, over the last 2 years. Starting in mid-2024, strategic buyers began overhauling their supply chains, diverting contracts en masse to alternative suppliers in Canada, Australia, and parts of Argentina. Interestingly, this wasn't just a matter of price. According to CBOT Futures, the cost of Kansas hard red wheat had dipped just $8 to $10 per ton, year over year, hardly enough to justify a 35 to 40% drop in U.S. export contracts. That signaled something deeper, a loss of trust. The root causes? Well, there were 3 critical issues: logistical consistency, quality certification standards, and political unpredictability in Washington. A report from AgriPulse Data Services released in May spotlighted this trend with a key example from the Philippines. San Miguel Foods in Manila, historically importing about 2.7 million tons annually of U.S. wheat blends, opted out of a 110,000-ton renewal in March 2025. Instead, it signed deals with Vetra in Saskatchewan for 120,000 tons of high-protein winter wheat, and with Australia's CBH for 40,000 tons of APW-grade noodle wheat. Soon after, the Philippine Customs Authority updated its port insurance tables. For U.S. shipments, a political delay risk premium was added, raising the cost of dry cargo from Seattle to $410 per ton. Meanwhile, shipments from Vancouver only incurred $225 per ton, so the freight difference wasn't about transportation, it was about risk insurance. A similar story unfolded across the Atlantic, on the Rouen to La Rochelle corridor, Europe's milling epicenter. French agricultural data shows United States wheat imports fell to 132,000 tons in the first quarter of 2025, the lowest since 2002. Canadian imports, meanwhile, surged to 218,000 tons. Despite France acknowledging the strong protein profile of United States wheat, buyers criticized the inconsistent documentation tied to carbon footprint certifications. With the European Union's new CBAM, or Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, rules, unreliable paperwork from Chicago and Portland raised customs clearance risks. Canada responded differently. It plugged directly into the European Union's traces system, providing carbon scores through QR codes embedded in shipping invoices. These documents came with fewer regulatory hurdles, no red line flags. An internal memo from the French Millers Federation in April even issued a third warning on glyphosate residue in United States wheat, while Canadian samples remained stable. South Korea's market tells an even more technical story. Seoul's new food safety initiative for 2025 cut the glyphosate limit to 30 parts per billion. United States wheat, especially hard red winter, often tested between 200 and 400 parts per billion, well above the new threshold. USDA records from late 2024 showed 28% of United States shipments to South Korea were retested on arrival, delaying logistics and discouraging buyers. Meanwhile, Canada cut glyphosate use by 45% in the prairie provinces through its Clean Farm Transition program. At Saskatchewan University, drones using deterministic modeling lowered residue risk with 90% accuracy. The result? Well, Canadian wheat captured 62% of the Korean market in the first 5 months of 2025. The Korea Food and Drug Safety Agency and the Parallel Economics Institute estimated this shift cost the United States $410 million, leading to around 6,200 job losses in North Dakota alone. Mexico's case was driven more by logistics than residues. United States border tensions, migrant-related delays, stricter food safety scans at Mesa and Laredo resulted in average wait times of over 12 hours per load. That broke the just-in-time supply model Mexican mills depend on. In contrast, Canada signed a fast-lane rail deal offering seamless grain flow from Alaska to Baja. By May 2025, Canada's wheat share in Mexico had risen 38%, while the United States share fell from 32% to just 17%. The domestic impact in the United States was honestly harsh. Kansas Wheat Commission data showed silo stockpiles ballooned by 44% year over year. Spot market prices fell from $6.92 to $6.05 per bushel. With break-even at $6.10, many mid-size farms were suddenly unprofitable. Despite the evidence, U.S. policymakers still describe these shifts as temporary. But, Purdue University's Food and Agriculture Policy Research Center warns otherwise. In global wheat trade, trust builds slowly, and once a buyer switches, there's actually less than a 15% chance they return within 5 years. If major importers like France, Korea, Mexico, and Italy don't come back, the U.S. could permanently lose up to 10 million tons in annual wheat exports, dropping from the 26 million average in 2020 to 2022 to just 16 million. The Chicago Fed's June report projects that such a loss would shrink Midwest GDP by $19.4 billion and cut 45,000 non-agricultural jobs. Washington hopes to redirect wheat exports to India and Nigeria, but honestly, with India's price protections and Nigeria's infrastructure limitations, these markets remain second tier for now. Meanwhile, Canada's surge isn't accidental. Since 2021, Ottawa has invested $950 million Canadian dollars into its protein supercluster, a tech-integrated grain ecosystem connecting growers in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba. Their supply chains are now fully digitized, with QR code tracking for protein, moisture, and pesticide levels, available in real time. Australia's CBH Group has followed suit. In contrast, the United States still relies on fragmented state-by-state PDF reports. This outdated system continues to erode buyer confidence. To counter this, the United States Department of Agriculture submitted the Strategic Grain Reliability Act to Congress in March 2025. The bill would create a unified IoT-based certification pipeline and provide transport insurance safeguards against political instability. But, its fate is unclear due to ongoing federal budget disputes. The result? Spiking futures volatility on the Chicago Exchange. That's making global buyers even more nervous. So what does all this mean? The quiet but sweeping pivot from the Philippines to France, from Korea to Mexico, shows that geopolitical risk now matters more than mere cost in the grain trade. Canada's political stability and sustainable infrastructure are shifting the market northward. For the United States, there's only one path forward: secure new midterm trade deals to stabilize buyer expectations and, rapidly digitize the fractured certification system. If not, American wheat could face a long-term decline, shaking not only agriculture but also finance, logistics, and research institutions across the Midwest. The message from the world is loud and clear. Buyers don't just want the cheapest wheat, they want the most trustworthy partner. Page 1 of the United States playbook must start with that fact. If not, today's silent shifts could become tomorrow's loud reckoning.